All right, chapter 43, I'm sorry. The mystery of the apocalypse. The presence of the temple of Diana at Ephesus marked that city as sacred to the mystery religion, for the seven wonders of the ancient world were erected to indicate the repositories of recondite knowledge. Of Ephesus H.P. Blavatsky writes, it was a focus of the universal secret doctrines, the weird laboratory whence fashioned inelegant Grecian phraseology sprang the quintessence of Buddhistic, Zoroastrian, and Chaldean philosophy. Artemis, the gigantic concrete symbol of a theosophico-pantheistic abstractions, the great mother Multimama, androgen, and patroness of the Ephesian writings, was conquered by Paul. But although the zealous converts of the apostles pretended to burn all their books on curious arts, enough of these remained for them to study when their first zeal had cooled off. See Isis Unveiled. Being a great center of pagan learning, Ephesus had been the locale for many early Christian myths. The assertion has been made that it was the last domicile of the Virgin Mary, also that the tomb of St. John the Divine was located there. According to legend, St. John did not depart from this life in the usual manner, but selecting his vault, entered it while still alive, and closing the entrance behind him, vanished forever from mortal sight. A rumor was current in ancient Ephesus that St. John would sleep in his tomb until the return of the Savior, and that when the apostle turned over on his sepulchral couch, the earth above moved like the coverlets of a bed. Subjected to more criticism than any other book now incorporated in the New Testament, the Apocalypse, popularly accredited to St. John the Divine, is by far the most important but least understood of the Gnostic Christian writings. Hold on. Oh, the throne of God and of the Lamb. Before the throne of God was the crystal sea representing the skymium of the living waters which are above the heavens. Before the throne also were four creatures, a bull, a lion, an eagle, and a man. These represented the four corners of creation and the multitude of eyes with which they were covered are the stars of the firmament. The 24 elders have the same significance as the priests gathered around the statue of Ceres in the greater Eleusinian rite, and also the Persian genii, or gods of the hours of the day, who, casting away their crowns, glorify the Holy One as symbolic of the divisions of time. The elders adore the timeless and enduring spirit in the midst of them. All right, where was I? Though Justin Martyr declared the book of Revelation to have been written by John, one of Christ's apostles, its authorship was disputed as early as the 2nd century after Christ. In the 3rd century, these contentions became acute, and even Dionysius of Alexandria and Eusebius attacked the Johannine theory, declaring that both the book of Revelation and the Gospel according to St. John were written by one Cerinthius, who borrowed the name of the great apostle, the better to foist his own doctrines upon the Christians. Later, Jerome questioned the authorship of the Apocalypse, and during the Reformation, his objections were revived by Luther and Aramus. The once generally accepted notion that the book of Revelation was the actual record of a mystical experience occurring to St. John while the seer was an exile in the Isle of Patmos is now regarded with disfavor by more critical scholars. Other explanations have therefore been advanced to account for the symbolism permeating the volume and the original motive for its writing. The more reasonable of these theories may be summed up as follows. First, upon the weight of evidence furnished by its own contents, the book of Revelation may well be pronounced a pagan writing, one of the sacred books of the Eleusinian or Phrygian mysteries. As a corollary, corollary, the real author of the work setting forth the profundities of Egypt and Greek mysticism must have been an initiate himself and consequently obligated to write only in the symbolic language of the mysteries. Second, it is possible that the book of Revelation was written to reconcile the seeming disparities between the early Christian and pagan religious philosophies. When the zealots of the primitive Christian church sought to Christianize pagandom, the pagan initiates retorted with a powerful effort to paganize Christianity. The Christians failed, but the pagans succeeded. With the decline of paganism, the initiated pagan hierophants transferred their base of operations to the new vehicle of primitive Christianity, adopting the symbols of the new cult to conceal those eternal verities which are ever the priceless possession of the wise. The apocalypse shows clearly the resultant fusion of pagan and Christian symbolism and thus bears irrefutable evidence of the activities of these initiated minds operating through early Christianity. Third, the theory has been advanced that the book of Revelation represents the attempt made by the unscrupulous members of a certain religious order to undermine the Christian mysteries by satirizing their philosophy. This nefarious end they hope to attain by showing the new faith to be merely a reinstatement of the ancient pagan doctrines, by heaping ridicule upon Christianity, and by using its own symbols towards its disparagement. For example, the star which fell to earth, Revelation 8, 10, 11, could be construed to mean the Star of Bethlehem, and the bitterness of that star, called wormwood, and which poisoned mankind, could signify the false teachings of the Christian church. While the last theory has gained a certain measure of popularity, the profundity of the apocalypse leads the discerning reader to the inevitable conclusion that this is the least plausible of the three hypotheses. To those able to pierce the veil of its symbolism, the inspired source of the document requires no further corroborative evidence. In the final analysis, true philosophy can be limited to neither creed nor faction. In fact, it is incomparable with every artificial limitation of human thought. The question of the pagan or Christian origin of the book of Revelation is consequently of little importance. The intrinsic value of the book lies in its magnificent epitome of the universal mystery, an observation which led St. Jerome to declare that it is susceptible of 7 entirely different interpretations. Untrained in the reaches of ancient thought, the modern theologian cannot possibly cope with the complexities of the apocalypse, for to him this mystic writing is but a phantasmagoria, the divine inspiration of which he is sorely tempted to question. In the limited space here available, it is possible to sketch but briefly a few of the salient features of the vision of the seer of Patmos. A careful consideration of the various pagan mysteries will assist materially also in filling the inevitable gaps in this abridgment. In the opening chapter of the Apocalypse, St. John describes the Alpha and Omega who stood in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. Surrounded by his flaming planetary regents, the Sublime One thus epitomizes in one impressive and mysterious figure the entire sweep of humanity's evolutionary growth, past, present, and future. It's cold down here, so you know. That's why I'm stuttering and fumbling. I'll blame it on that. The first stages of man's earthly development, writes Dr. Rudolf Steiner, ran their course at a period when the earth was still fiery, and the first human incarnations were formed out of the element of fire. At the end of his earthly career, man will himself radiate his inner being towards creativity by the force of the element fire. This continuous development from the beginning to the end of the earth reveals itself to the seer when he sees on the astral plane the archetype of evolving man. The beginning of the earthly evolution stands forth in the fiery feet, its end in the fiery continents, and the complete power of the creative world to be finally won is seen in the fiery source coming out of the mouth. See occulted seals and columns. In his restored New Testament, James Morgan Price traces the relationship of the various parts of the Alpha and Omega to the seven sacred planets of the ancients. To quote, the Logos figure described is a composite picture of the seven sacred planets. He has the snowy white hair of Cronus, Father Time, the blazing eyes of wide-seeing Zeus, the sword of Ares, the shining face of Helios, and the chiton and girdle of Aphrodite. His feet are of Mercury, the metal sacred to Hermes, and his voice is like the murmur of the ocean's waves, the many waters, alluding to Selene, the moon goddess of the four seasons and of the waters. The seven stars carried by this immense being in his right hand are the governors of the world. The flaming sword issuing from his mouth is the creative fiat or word of power by which the illusion of material permanence is slain. Here also is represented in all his symbolic splendor the Hierophant of the Phrygian mysteries, his various insignia emblematic of his divine attributes. 7 priests bearing lamps are his attendants, and the stars carried in his hand are the 7 schools of the mysteries whose power he administers. As one born again out of spiritual darkness into perfect wisdom, his Archimagus is made to say, I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. In the 2nd and 3rd chapter, St. John delivers to the 7 churches which are in Asia the injunctions received by him from the Alpha and Omega. The churches are here analogous to the rungs of a mithric ladder, and John, being in the spirit, ascended through the orbits of the 7 sacred planets until he reached the inner surface of the Empyrean. After the soul of the prophet, writes the anonymous author of Mankind, their origin and destiny, in his ecstatic state he passed in its rapid flight through the 7 spheres, from the sphere of the moon to that of Saturn, or from the planet which corresponds to Cancer, the gate of man, to the Capricorn, which is the gate of the gods. A new gate opens to him in the highest heaven, and in the zodiac beneath which the 7 planets revolve, in a word, in the firmament, or that which the ancients called Crystalium Primum, or the crystal heaven. When related to the Eastern system of metaphysics, these churches represent the chakras or nerve ganglia, along the human spine, the door in heaven being the Brahmavardra, or point in the crown of the skull, Golgotha, through which the spiritual spirit fire passes to liberation. The church of Ephesus corresponds to the Muladhara, or sacred ganglion, and the other churches to the higher ganglia according to the order given in Revelation. Dr. Steiner discovers a relationship between the 7 churches and the divisions of the Aryan race. Thus, the Church of Ephesus stands at the Arch-Indian branch, the Church of Smyrna, and Arch-Persians, the Church of Pergamos, the Chaldean, Egyptian, Semitic, the Church of Thyatira, the Grecian, Latin, Roman, the Church of Sardis, the Tetuan, Anglo-Saxon, the Church of Philadelphia, the Slavic, and the Church of Laodicea, the Manichaean. The 7 churches also signify the Greek vowels, of which Alpha and Omega are the first and last. A difference of opinion exists as to the order in which the 7 planets should be related to the churches. Some proceed from the hypothesis that Saturn represents the Church of Ephesus, but from the fact that the city was sacred to the moon goddess, and also that the sphere of the moon is the first above that of the earth, the planets obviously should ascend in their ancient order from the moon to Saturn. From Saturn, the soul would naturally ascend through the door in the Empyrean. In the 4th and 5th chapters, St. John describes the throne of God upon which sat the Holy One, which was and is to come. About the throne, got a picture. Hold on. Yeah, no. About the picture were 24 lesser seats upon which sat 24 elders arrayed in white garments and wearing crowns of gold. Finish that sentence. John's vision of the New Jerusalem. In the upper left-hand corner is shown the destruction of Babylon, also the angel which cast the great millstone into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall the great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. Below is the horseman, called Faithful and True, casting the beast into the bottomless pit. At the lower right is the angel with the key to the bottomless pit, who with a great chain binds Satan for 1,000 years. In the heavens above is represented one like unto the Son of Man, who carries a great sickle, with which he reaps the harvest of the world. In the center is the holy city, the New Jerusalem, with its 12 gates, and the mountain of the Lamb rising in the midst thereof. From the throne of the Lamb pours the great river of crystal, or living water, signifying the spiritual doctrine. Upon all who discover and drink of its waters is conferred immortality. Kneeling upon a high cliff, St. John gazes down upon the mystic city, the archetype of the perfect civilization yet to be. Above the New Jerusalem, in a great sunburst of glory, is the throne of the Ancient One, which is the light of those who dwell in the matchless empire of the Spirit. Beyond the recognition of the uninitiated world is an ever-increasing aggregation composed of the spiritual elect. Though they walk the earth as ordinary mortals, they are of a world a part of their own ceaseless efforts. The kingdom of God is being slowly but surely established upon earth. These illumined souls are the builders of the New Jerusalem, and their bodies are the thriving stones in its walls. Lighted by the torch of truth, they carry on their work through their activities. The golden age will return to the earth, and the power of sin and death will be destroyed. For this reason, the wise declare that virtuous and illumined men, instead of ascending to heaven, will bring heaven down to establish it in the midst of earth itself. Crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeding lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. He who sat upon the throne held in his right hand a book sealed with 7 seals, which no man in heaven or earth had been found worthy to open. Then appeared a lamb, Aries, the first and chief of the zodiacal signs, which had been slain, having 7 horns, rays, and 7 eyes, lights. The lamb took the book from the right hand of him that sat upon the throne, and the 4 beasts and all the elders fell down and worshiped God and the Lamb. During the early centuries of the Christian church, the lamb was universally recognized as the symbol of Christ, and not until after the 5th Synod of Constantinople, the Quincet Synod, A.D. 692, was the figure of the crucified man substituted for that of Agnus Dei. As shrewdly noted by one writer on the subject, the use of the lamb is indicative of the Persian origin of Christianity, for the Persians were the only people to symbolize the first sign of the zodiac by a lamb. Because a lamb was the sin offering of the ancient pagans, the early mystic Christians considered this animal as an appropriate emblem of Christ, whom they regarded as the sin offering of the world. The Greeks and the Egyptians highly venerated the lamb or ram, often placing its horns upon the foreheads of their gods. The Scandinavian god Thor carried a hammer made from a pair of ram's horns. The lamb is used in preference to the ram, apparently because of its purity and gentleness. Also, since the creator himself was symbolized by Aries, his son would consequently be the little ram or lamb. The lambskin apron worn by the Freemasons over the part of the body symbolized by Typhon or Judas represents that purification of the generative processes which is the prerequisite to true spirituality. In this allegory, the lamb signifies the purified candidate, its 7 horns representing the divisions of illuminated reason, and its 7 eyes the chakras or perfected sense perceptions. The 6th to 11th chapters inclusive are devoted to an account of the opening of the 7 seals on the book held by the Lamb. When the first seal was broken, there rode forth a man on a white horse wearing a crown and holding in his hand a bow. When the second seal was broken, there rode forth a man upon a red horse, and in his hand was a great sword. When the third seal was broken, there rode the fourth man upon a black horse, and with a pair of balances in his hand. And when the fourth seal was broken, there rode forth Death upon a pale horse, and hell followed after him. The four horsemen of the apocalypse may be interpreted to signify the four main divisions of human life. Birth is represented by the rider on the white horse who comes forth conquering and to conquer. The impetuosity of youth by the rider on the red horse who took peace from the earth. Maturity by the rider on the black horse who weighs all things in the scales of reason. And death by the rider on the pale horse who was given power over the fourth part of the earth. In the Eastern philosophy, these horsemen signified the four yugas, or ages of the world, which, riding forth at their appointed times, become for a certain span the rulers of creation. Commenting on the 24 allocution of Chrysostom, the origin of all religious worship, Dupuis notes that each of the four elements was represented by a horse bearing the name of God, who is set over the element. The first horse, signifying the fire ether, was called Jupiter and occupied the highest place in the order of the elements. This horse was winged, very fleet, and describing the largest circle encompassed by all the others. It shone with the purest light. Hold on. And on its, I'm going to go right here. And on its body were the images of the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the bodies in the ethereal regions. The second horse, signifying the element of air, was Juno. It was inferior, to the horse Jupiter and described a smaller circle. In color was black, but the part exposed to the sun became luminous, thus signifying the diurnal and nocturnal conditions of air. The third horse, symbolizing the element of water, was sacred to Neptune. It was a heavy gate and described a very small circle. The fourth horse, signifying the static element of earth, described as immovable and championing its bits, was the steed of Vesta. Despite their differences in temperature, these four horses lived harmoniously together, which is in accord with the principles of the philosophers who declared the world to be preserved by the concord of harmony of its elements. In time, however, the racing horse of Jupiter burned the mane of the horse of Earth. The thundering steed of Neptune also became covered with sweat, which overflowed the immovable horse of Vesta and resulted in the deluge of Ducalon. At last, the fiery horse of Jupiter will consume the rest when the three inferior elements, purified by reabsorption in the fire ether, will come forth renewed, constituting a new heaven and a new earth.